teach you again time on side.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kindly switch off your phone and put it in the silent mode. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to you all for the doctoral defense of Father Varan on the topic Philosophy of Difference, tracing a new philosophical approach through complementing the views of Dr. B. R. Ambedkar and Ambedkar-Gandhi for Dalit emancipation in India. A special welcome to the doctoral examination panel. We have external examiner Professor Dr. Kuruvilla and internal examiner Professor Dr. Jeyard, along with the guide Professor Dr. Nishant. A special welcome to the candidate. A matter of procedure. First, the candidate will expose the thesis for not more than half an hour. Then the external reader and the internal reader will each question the candidate for half an hour. Third, the guide, if he so wishes, may question the candidate. Lastly, anyone from the audience may ask for a clarification or pose a problem. Thank you. Now over to Father Varan. You may start with a short prayer and proceed to read the synopsis.
Thank you, dear panel. Welcome one and all. Today as being the solemnity of Annunciation, the actual day of the Incarnation, God became human as Jesus. Jesus, the ultimate liberator, the friend of the least in the least of the society. I invite you all to recite his own prayer, the prayer that he taught us, the Lord's Prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Dear Lord, deliver us from the evil of oppression, and forgive us our sins of oppression. As an introduction, I am immensely glad to have done this work on Dalit emancipation by Dr. Ambedkar and Gandhi of their historic encounter at the Yerwada jail, where their interaction formally started with the Pune Pact. The core of my interest in Dalit emancipation is inspired by none other than our Lord Jesus, whose prime focus was the least of the society. First, my interest in Dr. Ambedkar was sparkled in me while I was working among the Dalits of a remote village in Madurai Archdiocese, my own diocese, and my interaction with the anti-caste group of people of my diocese. It began to glow during my teaching experience on contemporary Indian philosophy and original philosophy. Needless to mention that my family, especially my dad, Professor Dr. A. Pushparajan, a well-known Gandhian scholar and practitioner, gave me a positive outlook on Gandhi. Such crucial combination of these two opposites for a common purpose of effective Dalit emancipation was possible, all because of Derrida, about whom I got introduced while doing a preliminary paper here in JD under the guidance of Professor Dr. Nishant, a well-acclaimed Viridian scholar. It was thus that I have been led to explore using these three great thinkers of recent times for Dalit emancipation. It is not a comparative study, nor a study of convergence. It is rather a novel philosophical study of using the philosophy of mass as a tool for understanding the two binary oppositional thinkers, Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar, for a common cause. With this personal note on my journey into this project, let me now proceed with my presentation summarizing my work in the order of the 5 major steps of research, that is, context, problem, hypothesis, methodology, and findings. Until findings, I will be rushing up. After findings, during findings, I will go line by line in my text. Context, the overall context is the living problem of the Dalit problem, which is very evident from the recent incident at Vengivel in a village in Tamil Nadu. The immediate context would be a lack of concerted effort and action to address this, though Dr. Ambedkar had been working so efficiently for that, and also Dalit emancipation was effected by M.K. Gandhi also. They are placed antithetically, and that's the problem of this project. The problem would be, while both of them are committed to the cause of Dalit liberation, but they have a lot of differences. Those differences are inappropriately constructed to be oppositions. The net result of such an oppositional engagement has only stalled the process of Dalit emancipation, for which both of them spent their life and energy. The problem of this research project is to give a philosophical response to such a situation of stalemate. So, we have devised the research question like this. What is the result of Ambedkar and of Gandhi towards emancipation of the Dalits, so as to make those approaches more feasible, more beneficial, and more effective in dealing with the cause of the liberation of the Dalits in India today? Therefore, the hypothesis is formulated like this. Jacques Derrida's difference provides a novel philosophical response to oppositional engagement of binary opposites, without allowing any one of them to totalize or exert authority over another, and appreciating each one's uniqueness by allowing the differences among them to interplay in order to arrive at richer meaning which is already and not yet. If the approaches of Dr. Ambedkar and Gandhi for Dalit emancipation are deliberated with the philosophy of difference as the key and tool, then they need not be considered oppositional but as complementary to each other for Dalit emancipation. Since it involves a lot of textual study also, it develops into historical, descriptive method, exploratory method. But towards the end, due to the interference of the philosophy of difference, the normal method would not be sufficient. That's why the method would be renamed here as a differential reflective method, so that it involves the interplay between these two personalities. The chapterization is of 7 chapters, which is given in the text here. So I come to the findings of the project. Dr. Ambedkar and his Dalit emancipation project. The chapters of this work brought out Dr. Ambedkar's novel methodology for Dalit liberation, along with a clear idea of his theoretical basis. He had a steadfast commitment to the realization of the final goal, which is the Trinitarian union of ideals of equality, liberty, and fraternity, which in turn would pave way for an ideal society with justice as the cornerstone. Since such a just ideal society, as being directly opposed to the singular and fabricated Hindu identity, entails a culturally and historically diverse identity. The constitution will be the yardstick for it, and the equality that it gives will not be nominal or notional for all, but preferential option for the most affected Dalits. Such preferential treatment granted by the Constitution is sure to build India as a welfare state with the socialist, liberalist and democratic principles, as against the totalitarian Hindu identity, and thus would truly bring about real rectification of their downtrodden status. With such a philosophical foundation for the preferential option for the Dalits as the basis of his emancipatory praxis, Dr. Ambedkar suggested a novel methodology for their liberation. He used a multiplicity of separatist engagements with the oppressive system, such as social, linguistic, territorial, economic, educational, political, and religious. Such a methodology of separateness of the Dalits arose only after he had tried various efforts within Hinduism, failure of which compelled him to move away from it in order to emancipate the Dalits. He clearly perceived that the oppression was caused mainly due to the tyranny of one section of the society, namely the Brahminical, with the caste system as their master key, coupled with the religious sanction of the Varna system. Hence, this radical method of separatism, envisioning annihilation of the whole of the caste structure, culminated in a radical marking out of it by his conversion to Buddhism, along with many other Dalits. This methodology of dissent must be appraised only in the perspective of the ideal society he envisaged, failing which one would characterize it as destructive and flawed. Separatism is a method for realizing the ideals of coexistence and osmosis, and the community mode of living may seem contradictory and counterproductive too. This study finds enough reason for appreciating it. It is precisely in this that the uniqueness and distinctness of Dr. Ambedkar's method of Dalit emancipation consists in having its final effect of leading the Dalits to a life of equality and fraternity with the rest of the Indian society. Gandhian approach towards Dalit emancipation is characteristically different from that of Dr. Ambedkar. The third and fourth chapters of this study, after a thorough and impartial investigation of whether and what Gandhi has done substantially for Dalit liberation, has found out some startling facts as given below. First of all, Gandhi's Dalit activism is based on a strong theoretical basis which was organized into threefold parameters of understanding the reality, that is, world, self, and the ultimate. Accordingly, his Advaiti conception of the world sets up the platform of fraternity and aims at organic unification of the Dalits with the rest of the society. Further, Gandhi's conception of the self as an autonomous and perfectible individual forms a strong basis for liberty and aims at the change of heart on the part of the oppressing people, coupled with the liberative practice of the oppressed people. And his conception of the ultimate as truth non-violence becomes a stronghold for equality. Moreover, Gandhian vision of Sarvodaya, forming it as the basis for Swaraj, along with the Swadeshi, are the various nuances of his political liberation along with the social liberation, which is again parallelly Ambedkarite. Sarvodaya would be a blind notion of welfare of all in the country without its necessary corollary, the Antyodaya, the welfare of the least and the last. This is also very similar to Ambedkarian preferential treatment of the unequals. It is with this overarching theoretical vision that Gandhian praxis of Dalit liberation is considered in this project. For convenience sake, his activism can be studied at three levels corresponding to three phases of his life. The first, preparatory stage, has a few markers for his pro-Dalit perspective, with numerous instances indicating such outlook already in his South African activism. The second phase of his activism may be said to start from his return to India in 1915. In this phase, Gandhi strategically ordained himself as ultra-orthodox with the various pro-Varna and pro-caste camouflages, thus to get recognized by the Hindu orthodoxy, who otherwise would have rejected his ideas as erratic and frantic. He tried to convince the oppressive caste Hindus to understand the Dalit reality and their need to purge themselves of the sin of untouchability, and for their change of heart to accept Dalits as their own. Gandhi, at this phase, was equally focusing on conscientizing the Dalits about their equal rights in schooling and temple entry. But in the third phase, starting with the Pune Pact, it opened his eyes to the hard heart of the orthodoxy in accepting the Dalits, thus propelling him for radical Dalit liberative measures and upliftment. Similar to the second phase, it was two-pronged. First, the upliftment of Dalits by various methods, and second, the change of heart of the caste Hindus, calling for an end of caste, unification of Varnas, interdining, and even intermarriage with the Dalits, to the extent of making Dalit intermarriage compulsory and obligatory. It reached its climax by inviting all Hindus to be called one Varna, which will be called Dalit Varna, making all Hindus to be called Dalits, exhibiting his own unique way of integration of the Hindu society in particular and the whole of the country in general. Such tripartite division of Gandhian Dalit activism is to be understood in an evolutionary model alongside the sites of his times, growing participation, interaction with the Dalit reality in India, and his differential engagement with Dr. Ambedkar. He moved from an ultra-orthodox mode to a hyper-radical style. It was a slow, steady, premeditated and strategic process to make the oppressing population know their sin and liberate the Dalits. It is a two-pronged process of removal of the oppressive clutches, at the same time empowering the oppressed. Gandhi's Dalit activism became so intense that he won the enmity of the Brahminic minority, which in turn culminated in his assassination by a Brahmin himself, masterminded by an ultra-orthodox group. This dreadful act of vengeance by staunch Orthodox Hindus is itself a strong proof of Gandhi's avid Dalit activism, wishing to change the Hindu religion upside down, which was ultimately the dream project of Dr. Ambedkar. Oppositional construct between these two approaches discussion in the fifth chapter of this work of the central problem of oppositional constructs between Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar led us to articulate the following findings. First, both Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar are champions of Dalit emancipation in their own ways. Both their values are valid given their core beliefs, ideologies, vision, and theoretical framework. However, their methods are so divergent so as to be considered oppositional to one another. First, their oppositional stance surfaced soon after the first roundtable conference, where Dr. Ambedkar has staunchly demanded separate electorates for the Dalits. Second, in the second roundtable conference, Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar stood at loggerheads over the same issue of Dalit separate electorates, as Gandhi claimed to stop it with his life because it would eternally separate the Dalits from the rest of the Hindus. Dr. Ambedkar felt that separate electorates is an utmost need for political empowerment of the Dalits. With communal award and the consequent Gandhi's fast unto death and the subsequent Pune Pact, the oppositional stance between them became hard and hostile. After facing the defeat in the 1937 elections, Dr. Ambedkar attributed it to the joint electorates and hence voiced in favor of separate electorates. Still more heavy, it is thus after this period, his abject criticism on the Congress and especially on Gandhi fled up to full swing. He ended up publishing two books, one in 1943 and 45, attacking both Gandhi and Congress. Moreover, Dr. Ambedkar was keen on making use of the British ruling to get separate electorates for Dalits, which was thwarted by the partition. The issue of separate electorates paved the way for the second major oppositional stance between these two leaders, as evident from their perspectives of Varna and caste. His position of orthodoxy, which he upheld during his second phase of Dalit activism. Gandhi, in spite of his orthodoxy camouflage, did not falter to criticize Hinduism of its practices, customs, and observances, even to the extent of declaring non-belief of his Shastras if they support such inhuman practices of untouchability and inequality. His approach started with a reformist tone to save Hinduism of its excrescent and ugly practices of untouchability. But in course of time, he understood the role the caste system was playing in sustaining untouchability, in segregating the Dalits and causing a religious impediment to form fraternal relations. Hence, Gandhi gave a clarion call to end the caste. If at all one had to maintain the Varna system, Gandhi held that it should be only one Varna, that is the Dalit Varna, to the banishment of all other Varnas who held themselves superior to the Dalits. So he called all the Hindus to declare themselves as Dalits and have cordial relationship with them, even intermarriage also. Thus, Gandhi was in an evolutionary mode, always reforming and reformulating his own ideas with regard to caste and Varna. Dr. Ambedkar's approach was quite contrary to the mass leader like Gandhi. Dr. Ambedkar, though he had a ray of hope within Hinduism during his early period of his activism, he moved away from it even to the extent of declaring his exit from Hinduism. That ray of hope did not quench until last, as he took so many years to actualize his exit. Ambedkar's conception of the Hindu religion is quite contrary to Gandhi's reformist conception. He considered Hinduism as the source of all evils for Dalits and also for all Hindus, given to his promulgation of caste system based upon its parent, the Varna system. His search for a religion to uphold the morality of its believers, void of any unequal structures within it, and with the necessary apparatus for the betterment of its believers, led him to corner it down on Buddhism. In a word, the whole of the fifth chapter of this study deals with the binarization of these two leaders as well as the opposition between these binaries. This binary opposition forms the general problem of this research project, and a possible answer would be found in the philosophy of difference. Philosophy of difference was Jacques Derrida was one philosopher who philosophized on the binary opposition, especially in the Western metaphysical tradition. Such privileging was the metaphysics of presence he named as the logocentrism. The construction of the privileged presence of one of the binaries is the core study which he is having. That's why he coins a new theory called difference by substituting an A instead of an E. He was siding with a few other thinkers like Nietzsche, Freud, Levinas and Heidegger as masters of difference and delay, as it is implied in difference. With their philosophization of the metaphysics of presence and their appreciation of differences with the expectancy of the yet to come, Derrida's difference provides an apt antidote to the construction of meaning or presence over one of the binaries and peripherization of the other. It calls for a rich interplay between them. Coming to the last part, the tool of difference and the Dr. Ambedkar-Gandhi opposition. Now, taking cue from the three perspectives of the philosophy of difference, that is, reteachability, differing and differing aspects, the oppositional engagement between Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar could be attempted as unfolding of the same, thus finalizing our discussions. There are three approaches to it. We are just following it. Celebration of differences between Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar. As binaries are fundamentally differences, the approaches of Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar can be seen as differences, constructed oppositional only in certain aspects. That is why the economy of sameness enters into their interaction. It is on account of such multitude of sameness that they are constructed oppositional, as all the binary opposites are constructed. A man cannot be considered oppositional to a donkey, nor a woman to a monkey. Oppositional construct is done between man and woman on account of their sameness of humanity, commonality of rational orientedness, emotion, motivation, etc. The same could be applied for Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar also, because they are to be celebrated and allowed to interplay than annihilating any one position, positing presence in one and anti-presence in another. The yet to come in the differing aspect between Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar. The second aspect of differing in difference is co-bound with the first aspect, difference, by means of delay, delegation, reprieve, detour, postponement, reserving, etc. It challenges the privileged binarization and presence. It celebrates the absence or non-presence of the yet to come. This in turn opens up the possibility of new meaning in the opposition of the binaries otherwise absent in one of them, and thus it is the root of all oppositions and their interplay. The Ambedkarian-Gandhian oppositional engagement is created, though their approaches and methods are at combatant position. An attempt at the resolution of contradictions would be logocentric, while preservation of their interplay would be difference, thus to preserve each one's uniqueness. The interplay of rich oppositional interaction between their approaches would help in nourishing the differing aspect of difference. The rich interaction between Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar during their lifetime had contributed to the enrichment of their respective methods. Each of them had grown out of their respective stances. Both of them became radical in their respective approaches for Dalit empowerment after oppositely engaging with one another during the Pune Pact. Dr. Ambedkar grew considerably in his emancipatory method of Dalit separatism, reaching the finale of conversion to Buddhism as a prophetic exit from casteist Hinduism. Gandhi maximized his harmonious integration of the Hindu masses with the Dalits, culminating his evolutionary models of Dalit liberation in the invitation to become one Dalit Varna. Such unknown and absent in their respective activism was the fruit of their oppositional interaction. This newness of their radicality is not only the differing aspect of difference but also of the reiterability. The sameness of their respective Dalit empowerment approaches allows them to inspire in one another the unknown, thus enriching the rich influx of meaning otherwise absent. Third one, complementarity of the approaches of Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar. While the twin aspects of difference discussed above are the analytical contributions of understanding Dr. Ambedkar-Gandhi oppositions of approaches, the theme of complementarity is the suggestive and the positive contribution of their oppositions, which is again the fruit of the philosophy of difference. The differing aspect highlights the differences between their methods, and the differing aspect manifests the absence in presence of one another. Combining these two aspects, the complementary aspect emanates out of the play of difference between them. Complementarity is all about difference. Yes, it exhibitions the absence in one as the presence in the other, or the present in the first as absent in the other. A variety of complementariness may be pointed out between their approaches. Their complementarity with regard to the well-being of Dalits is deliberated thus to give a culmination to this work's extensive discussions on Dalit empowerment. Dr. Ambedkar strongly insisted on the self-help empowerment of the Dalits to the extent of denying any external help which might have weakened their self-motivation, self-respect and self-action. Gandhi's approach of the necessary and zealous change of heart of the caste Hindus who practice untouchability on the Dalits is meritoriously complementary to Dr. Ambedkar's position and for the liberation of the Dalits. These two views may seem to be contradictory because self-help outrightly rejects external help and conversely oppresses conversion and necessitates the uprising of the oppressed. But the beauty of such incompatibility, if viewed as the yin-yang coordination, it is actually the creative beauty of difference, where presence and absence would form a unit, self and the other would form a coordination, and thus the binary opposites could interplay. It is in such creative coordination of the approaches of Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar that effective Dalit emancipation be achieved in the present caste-bound Indian society. The true enemy and she. In the process of testing the hypothesis, this project has made an astounding discovery that the two thinkers, despite their oppositional stances, are not really inimical to each other, nor to the cause of the Dalit emancipation, but rather they both were fighting against a common enemy, namely the Brahminical hegemony, playing a devious and surreptitious role in the perpetuation of Dalit oppression. This finding goes to the anti-authoritarian stances of Dr. Ambedkar's philosophy and that of Gandhi's. Such anti-authoritarianism is in fact strongly within the premises of difference as it questions the meaning construction and thus the claim of authority around the privileged binary along with the consequent debasement of the deprivileged one. This work discovers the anti-Brahminical stances of both these thinkers. Dr. Ambedkar had been hypercritic of Brahmins and their ideology, Brahminism, known from his authenticity of his teachings, writings. He deemed Brahminism to be the root of untouchability, to the oppression of the Dalits, to the humiliation of the Shudras, to be the mastermind behind the Varna caste combo, using their role as intellectual and religious leaders as a camouflage to devise their vicious and evil strategies. Similar is Gandhi's anti-authoritarian approach, known by his thoughts and writings. It consisted in questioning the Brahminical authority being internal to Hinduism and thereby shaking the power pillars of the Brahminical caste castle from within. This was perceived by the Brahminic masterminds as a dangerous and treacherous act on the part of Gandhi that they systematically planned for and successfully executed the annihilation of Gandhi by his assassination. Conclusion. The research project dealing with the question of finding a philosophical response to the oppositional constructions or positions of the approaches of Dr. Ambedkar and of Gandhi with regard to Dalit emancipation is hopefully answered in a prolific way. The hypothesis with which this project was begun has been proved to be conclusive enough. Hence, the following would be confidently be claimed as Derrida's difference provides a novel philosophical response to the oppositional engagements of binary opposites. It could be used as a tool to deliberate on the construction of binary opposition between the approaches of Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar with regard to their methods of Dalit emancipation. In the process, the work has made a discovery of the true enemy of Dalit liberation and empowerment, which is Brahminism, truly authoritarian, totalizing and singularizing. Unfortunately, much of energy and resources are at waste in the unfruitful drain of authoritarian construction of each one's supremo by the respective camps of Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar. The combined complementarity could produce more strength and vigor to combat the true enemy of both the camps and of the Dalits too, the Brahminism. Such cooperation between these two differential and complementary approaches would be a double-edged sword, since both these philosophies have anti-authoritarian critique of Brahminism in their own way, but with the alterity of the same. Their creative interplay of oppositional amalgamation, having their common enemy as Brahminism, could fight virulently against such a totalitarian philosophy, so that the real emancipation of the Dalits and of all subjugated people in the society would be effectively realized and achieved the already and not yet of difference. Thank you.
So thank you, Varan, for presenting your thesis within the given time, in fact before time. So now you have time with the external examiner to interact for half an hour.
recording?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, thank you, Varan, for this gigantic work. I know that you have put an enormous amount of work with passion, with dedication and commitment. While congratulating you for this enormous input, I also want to point out to the output in terms of the emancipation of the tribals, the Dalits, and all people who are marginalized. I have actually some general written observations which I may hand it over or I will take it later. But then first let me start with some general questions and clarifications. After that, if there is time, I will get back to the written observations that I have made. Okay, to begin with, the topic is important, challenging, very relevant. And you have taken three great personalities and their ideas, and as you rightly pointed out, you are not doing a comparative work, but you are using the tool of difference in order to bring together the thoughts, the vision, and the life aspirations of Ambedkar and Gandhi. As you know very well, the system of caste system, which has persisted for millennia, has now come to the forefront, especially in these 2-3 decades. And I am happy to note that you have already quoted the dangers of Hindutva and the totalizing and the totalitarian forces already in an article written by your father in 1997, that is almost about 25 years ago. So as such, yours is a work committed to peace, reconciliation, justice, and integral well-being of all. Before we begin this discussion, maybe it's good to, for the sake of the general audience, to have some simple clarifications about 3 points. The first one, can you explain in simple terms what was this Pune Pact and what were some of the implications of this Pune Pact?
Yes. The Pune Pact actually starts from the problem of the separate electorates. So when Dr. Ambedkar was strongly insisting on the separate electorates, because already it was granted by the British to the Muslims. So on this part, he was also asking the same to the Dalits. And Gandhi felt that these are all two different things, because he would nicely say that Muslims can live in eternity, as Muslims, but due to this separate electorates, the Dalits cannot live always in perpetuity as Dalits themselves. Because if you are going to give separate electorates like this, it is going to eternally divide the population into population. So with that vision, Gandhi said, even in the second roundtable conference, he said, it is precisely for this he attended actually. First roundtable conference he did not attend. It is precisely for this he attended there. And there, even before the British, with all, he said, I would encounter it with my life. And as soon as the communal award was granted, and then when they said separate electorates are granted to the Dalits, then he was conclusive that he should sit for this fast unto death, declaring it by various statements. He was declaring it to the British. Actually, he clarified his position that it is not against the Dalits, it is not against anybody else, it is against the British. I am sitting for this fast. And with that thing, those things arose. So Dr. Ambedkar and his team, they came for a compromise like So the British what it said, use it for a compromise and come up with a compromise, then we will agree. So like that they said. So that's why Jeyard jail, when he was jailed, at that time he was jailed for participating in the civil disobedience movement at that time. So at that time they all came here, in Jeyard jail. They sat for discussion, bargaining more or less like. The nuances I am not giving because the numbers are different. There was a bargaining for how much electorates, reserved electorates need to be given, joint electorates, right? So with that thing, ultimately it was fixed to 147, suppose my memory goes like this, it is in the papers there. So with that thing, they said this is, okay, a pact was made between these two companies that those who want joint electorates, maybe Gandhi side or something like, and the other one who wanted the separate electorates, so the Ambedkar side. So they sat for a pact and then they signed it, and that is called as the Pune Pact. From that on, my study and many other studies also they say that from that on only, both of them radicalized their positions. Thank you.
So do you construe this fast and death of Gandhi as some kind of intimidation?
It may not be appropriate to use that word intimidation, but indirectly it connotes to, like, because it is forcing somebody to come for a compromise. So I have suggested in my papers also that it is rather an unnatural settlement that they settled for. That's why it erupted again. No, as well, because at that time, though, the many temples were opened from the Hindu side. Many temples were opened. They were conducting a lot of processes. Like anti-untouchability league was formed. Then later on, that was changed the name as Harijan Sevak Sangh. And the temples were opened. Then conscientization happened. The Harijan week was, the untouchability week was conducted. They had a big public meeting on it also. All these things they did. And Dr. Ambedkar was also settled. But problem arose in the 1937 elections when his party failed to get more seats. Then things erupted. So that itself is a point that until last he will be doing the same. Again and again he will be again asking for separate electorates. Even after independence, even the parliament, as he was sitting as the law minister and also the drafting committee chairman on the Indian constitution, he will be again asking the same thing: give us separate electorate. So this itself shows that that settlement was not a very natural settlement. It was some problematic settlement only, but we cannot judge it. At that time, maybe Gandhi felt that this will settle the thing. I add one more thing also. If at all the separate electorates had been given, if Gandhi had not intervened like that, with that, so to say, intimidating process, what would have happened? I could very well visualize, which is evident in I referred about the Vengavel incident. Actually, the incident was 2 water tanks was granted to the same village. One serving to the caste Hindus and another serving to the Dalits of that village. Now, what happened is because of that issue, this contamination of this drinking water with the human excreta had happened, and it is still going on. They have not caught their enemies, means those who have perpetuated that. If at all, if it had been one, then surely they would not have done such a extreme thing like. So if we visualize this same effect, all through the country, what would have happened? In a particular city, this particular part is an electorate for the Dalits, and the other part is for the electorate for the Hindus. Then, as Gandhi had envisioned, it is going to be eternally separated. They are not going to be integrated at all. That's why maybe he sat on that very, he would say it is a theory ordeal, he would say.
Thank you. The second question is rather easy. You have already explained it, but for the sake of the audience, why do you insist calling Dr. Ambedkar and not Mahatma?
Thank you. It's a good further explanation because I was conscious to always refer to Ambedkar as Dr. Ambedkar. Because first of all, his doctorate is a hardly earned doctorate. It's an academic degree that he got, which Gandhi never had, so we need not to call him like that. Second, I take this cue from the philosophy of difference itself. Philosophy of difference always, though it talks about difference, celebration of opposites, all these things, it always takes one step to support the oppressed, the marginalized. Many a time this question was asked to Derrida himself in various interviews. He will be always insisting on this point that yes, if it is so, but yet this is we take one step forward to support the marginalized. So in that way, I purposely, my guide actually told early, years back, because the 5-year project, I suppose in the second year itself, he said that better you can use a normal word, because normally in research projects we don't use like in that doctorate degree. But I insisted on that. Later on, many of my friends also they said need to be why we are using that. They insisted on that because I want to put in practice the philosophy of difference already in my writing.
Okay. In very simple terms, the main topic or the tool that you use is difference. Just explain to the larger audience.
Yes.
Very simple.
Yes, it's true. Because I skipped the major part because I wanted to finish on time, but the moderator said I had still more time also. It's nice that the external examiner wants this clarification. Difference is actually coming from a root French word, which means actually in French it means differences. But actually, when Derrida goes to the root of that word, differe, which is the verbal form, it has two meanings already into it. It is not only the one meaning of it only is differences, the other meaning is delay. So, the delaying aspect and the differences aspect is inborn into it. So what he did was, in order to show that change, he replaces A instead of an E. It is a purposive thing he does. Because what he says that the E and A replacement is only known to the written thing, not to the spoken, because it sounds the same, difference only. So what he says, as I said early, that he is giving importance to the written form, because the written form is always considered as secondary by the Western metaphysics. Now with these things, he proceeds forward. He says this binary opposites, actually the problem of binary opposites is one of the binaries is given more importance. Like, for example, I will take from already what I have taken, man and woman. This human society considers man to be superior, like, always woman to be secondary to man. Now, any binary opposite if we are taking, this positing of presence only to one and deprivilege given to the other, that is a problem. So, what the philosophy of difference attempts is the first aspect of differences. The differences, of course, they are differences. They are not the same. They are not identical. So the differences can be celebrated. At the same time, the differences always it has some oppositional engagements also. That oppositional engagements always gives possibility of a future meaning, a delayed meaning, which is not present at that time, but in the future that delay, that opposition creates more meaning. So that tool actually I want to use for these two oppositional things, oppositional approaches of Dr. Ambedkar and Gandhi, saying that these two, though they are opposites, they are in fact differences. They are having differences a lot, and at the same time, their oppositions create new meanings. It gives new possibilities for new meanings. It does not. So philosophy of difference would always say that with Gandhi only, the whole what Gandhi approach is the best approach. No, it will not. Hold to that question. Or only with Ambedkar, this whole Dalit emancipatory possibility is there. That also difference would not hold. It would hold that the differences would be there. Now both of them have emancipatory possibilities. At the same time, they are not full. It need to be still more on the thumb. The not yet, already and not yet. So with that thing only, I move forward in this project.
Okay. Anyway, some general observations. The structure of the paper, the chapterization, and the main argument that you make, they have been very consistent, logical, straightforward. So in that way, I do believe that you have done justice to the task assigned to you. And at the same time, it is a deeply a philosophical paper because you are trying to show that ideas, in this case, the very notion of difference, can make a difference in the real world. So the role of theory, the myth of the practical man, that is actually indirectly sabotaged by your thesis. Before we go further, some suggestions. I would have maybe preferred that, the footnotes begin at each chapter. Maybe a glossary of the say English words could also be helpful. Then a kind of field work meeting, especially some there is, you did refer to some incidences, but maybe some kind of a field work encountering the actual difficulties within these theoretical framework could also be, could have been helpful, I believe. Then, trace, actually is also a loaded term. You have used it in the text, but I have not found any much on that word trace except in the title. Forget about it. Now I have a larger issue. See, you are using a Derridian term. He died in the year 2004 and he is a foreigner. Gandhi and Ambedkar, of course they studied abroad, but then they were deeply Indian. Don't you think that we don't have an Indian equivalent to this Derridian term? Or are we justified in using a foreign notion as a tool to bring about the reconciliation, the emancipation of two contradictions or two binaries from our Indian context?
Yeah, thank you for this beautiful question. Yes, of course, it is a French word that we are trying to use. But the implications of this philosophy, the characteristics of this philosophy are already there in various forms, I would say. Because the last chapter actually tries to pinpoint in Gandhi and also in Ambedkar how these characteristics of difference are already found. Though Derrida was after both these thinkers, but yet he had given a theoretical framework for understanding the binary oppositions. Because that was his perspective towards the Western metaphysics and also towards the whole reality itself. That's why he comes up with this philosophy along with his various other things. But these two thinkers, though they did not have only this perspective, they had some other world view, yet there are possibilities of these characteristics found in their writings, thinking, philosophy, all. And that's why the last chapter dedicates a good amount of work in checking out, culling out from their philosophies. What in Ambedkar, already these play of traces, as you already mentioned, play of traces is already there. The anti-authoritarianism is already there. Now, he would be saying, Dr. Ambedkar would be saying, consistency is the virtue of an ass, he would say. Because he was always refining his stance, So he was not positing a very, very firm stance, which is actually the philosophy of difference. Same thing, this work has already called out in many ways. The Gandhian ways in which all these characteristics are found. He also is a man who wrote we would say inconsistencies. He himself would declare his inconsistencies. Towards the end of his life, he was even writing one small booklet. He said, "This is my stance on varan." All the earlier things that you have about varna, whatever I have said, please throw them and burn them, he would say. because he was a person one who was refining his standpoint always, which is actually the philosophy of the France. Like this, many things can be pointed out. Especially this work points to their anti-authoritarian stance, which is again the philosophy of the France. Though they did not name it, yet this philosophy is already there in it. And that's why this paper, though it is taking difference as a tool, yet it is not actually using the Western modes of because approach towards reality actually towards is the same in any philosophy. The approach towards reality. So in both these philosophies, though they were earlier to Derrida, earlier to the philosophy of difference, yet the philosophy, this characteristics of philosophy are already there, and in this work tries to incorporate that also, identify that also, and then proceed forward. And that's why this surprising discovery came, because when we started, the hypothesis, actually we did not specify that it is the aspect of Brahmanism is coming out like. But it was really startling for me, because as I proceeded in writing this paper, this new aspect came out, the common enemy, of both these camps. So that is the contribution of the philosophy of difference. Identifying it is this philosophy, but they had both these things already there. Both of them were equally anti-Brahminical. And that's why we could find one Dr. Ambedkar walked out of this. Another wanted to stay inside it, shaking the castles, but yet he was killed. He was assassinated by the same hands, the Brahminic hands. So I would say the characteristics are already implied in their philosophy, and it is in various philosophies also. I would say.
And let me continue with the saying.
Yes.
You have reformulated not only in the beginning but towards the end also. The final enemy is Brahminism, and you have been repeatedly trying to say that this Brahminism is singular totalitarianism and authoritarianism. Therefore, if your methodology is correct, you can use this tool of difference to bring together two streams of thought which are not totalizing each other. For example, these Ambedkar-Gandhi. So you yourself admit that this tool will not function in the case of a totalitarian system like Brahminism or even fascism. Now my problem is not just in India today. When you look around the world, this totalitarian tendency is on the rise, both politically as well as religiously. This totalitarianism twins itself to religion as well as politics. So so there actually your tool fails because it is inadequate to address one which thinks that it has got total authority over the other. So what do you say to such a scenario, especially in the last 20 to 30 years, it has been on the rise all over the world?
Yeah, I second your view very much, because I am also of this opinion that there is a rise of authoritarianism, the right wing. Now they have started to talk about the extreme right. So the new governments that are being formed, all these are all going in that way. I would not maybe agree with the thing that it's a failure of this tool to address, because of course this tool will not work in that situation, but it gives the antidote to authoritarianism. In that way, it is a positive tool. Though it will not work within authoritarian framework because it has no go there. But actually, when it is talking about anti-authoritarianism, and if it is talking about the celebration of differences, when the authoritarian framework is talking about singularity, it is unification of oneness, one nation. In Hindu terms, we say one nation, one language, one religion theory. This tool will advocate the plurality. Celebration of plurality is itself a beautiful antidote to that singularizing and totalizing tendency of the authoritarian philosophies. In that way, I think this philosophy, because there are differences, and this tool is an effective tool, I suppose.
Okay, now coming back to what you were earlier saying, in fact, on page 341, you quote, I don't need to take it.
Okay.
You quote Victor Farrar saying, Ambedkar is close to postmodernity. I sympathize with that feeling. But later in page 346, you quote actually Subhash Anand's book, Gandhi as anti-modern and pre-modern. There I am not very convinced that Gandhi is anti-modern, that I have no problem. But that does not make him actually a postmodern. And you were trying somehow to bring that together. It's a good attempt, but I am not very sure of it. Can you just take page 347, where Subhash talks about the 5 core vows and virtues and how this is connected to the other. Page 347.
Yes. That is actually a good book that I read all through. At one point, he his effort is a good effort, I would say, because he is trying to call out the Gandhian philosophy in the postmodernist perspective. In that way, when he is coming out for this ashram observances of Satya, Ahimsa, Brahmacharya, Asteya, and Aparigraha, actually he says each one of these is actually giving importance to the other, not to the self. No? Satya is, I'm not very sure of his hypothesis and then thing. Yeah, he accounts for Satya, which is truth, as openness to the other. Truth always need to be other oriented. Because when I am talking about myself as the truth, what I hold as the truth, then it is no more truth. Always truth comprises both these views. So the other automatically comes into play when we talk about real truth. Ahimsa as non-violence, as sensitivity towards the other. Non-violence is actually a basic philosophy of Gandhi that the other's views also need to be accepted. When Jainism would hold non-violence as a non-killing, but Gandhi would say the views of others also need to be upheld. Like, for example, the Anekandavada of Jainism. Brahmacharya as journeying to the other. He thought that celibacy is not simply self-practicing, but it's actually the love of the other towards the other. Asteya, non-stealing, is respecting the other. If Gandhi would be saying that stealing is not simply stealing from others, stealing somebody's property and keeping for myself. Even hoarding itself, he would say, it is stealing. Because if I have too many of the things which is not necessary for me, for example, 2 shirts are necessary for me. If I am having 5 shirts with me, which deprives somebody else of 2 other shirts, then it is actually a stay, I would say. That's why
it's almost getting time. So can you just turn to the next page, 348,
okay.
where Gandhi's poetic approach to interpreting Bhagavad Gita. Henry may be interested in that.
Gita.
The
Yes.
poetic approach.
Yes. He does not want the readers to approach it as a poem or a law book or a aphoristic work. Such poetic approach would allow each reader to make richer. He invites the readers to reach it as in that way. In that way, he says that it will expand their meaning, because always poem has various openings. It is not one perspective that it is going to give. He distances himself from various interpretations, thus respecting their plurality, and particularly he gives importance to the karma aspect, action aspect that is in Gita. Why I have quoted here regarding this is the interpretation that Gandhi is giving to Gita is more or less the same as Ambedkar, how he interprets the Buddhist Dhamma, by his book, the Buddha and his Dhamma. So that that is the new interpretation that they are giving. That itself is a play of difference that I was arguing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kuruvilla. Now, time for the internal examiner, Dr. Stephen Jeyard.
Thank you, Benji. So, I'm very happy to be the internal reader for this thesis one for two reasons. One is academic and the other is personal. The personal I'll tell you later. The academic is, as Professor Kuruvilla already mentioned, is a very relevant topic today, right? As India is now dangerously manipulated by the Western interest towards a monopoly of one culture, one religion, language, even one election, and so on. So this thesis, with the help of Jeyard, invites a contemporary India to celebrate differences and to make the best use of the interplay of the binaries rather than glorifying any one of them, as you rightly mentioned. And I presented also very precise, comprehensive, dense and crispy. Of course, your whole thesis is about 450 pages, and to release them to 10 or 12 pages is really challenging, and you did a good job. And this topic invites a lot of debates in different fronts like political, cultural, academic, and religious circles. Both Gandhi and Ambedkar are great stalwarts, as we know, highly respected, at the same time thoroughly criticized also by the scholars. Even in our own Jnana campus here, there are scholars who tend to glorify Ambedkar at the point of degrading Gandhi, or vice versa. They may be in the audience, I don't know, and I don't want to take the names for my own safety. This is a welcome attempt to look at these two leaders through the lenses of Derrida, to bring something good out of their views, especially the domain of Dalit emancipation, a kind of thorn in the flesh for several centuries, millennia in our society. In spite of several strong differences in their views and convictions, the thesis tries to find a common platform where both can come together, like profound belief in democracy, dynamic power and good education for masses, free citizenship, removal of the oppressed elements of religions, their insistence upon the peaceful and democratic transformation, the ultimate power with the people, not so much with the state, all these things. So with this, the thesis as well trying to make the best use of the commonalities to create a well-balanced picture of Gandhi and Ambedkar. In the beginning of the thesis, the research question, the objectives, and the method are presented unambiguously in clear terms so that the reader gets a clear picture of what is going to come in the thesis. So this clear path shows that the candidate, you are convinced of the fact when one fails to plan, one actually plans to fail. The thesis is presented coherently, argued systematically, and analyzed critically, as the Professor Kuruvilla pointed out. The language is very good, not many mistakes except one or two, which I have already pointed out here. I will share with you. You can correct them later. It's a well-researched thesis. You have consulted lots of primary and secondary sources. The bibliography runs into 16 pages and more than 1,500 footnote references reveal that this study has been done very meticulously. There is a great element of consistency in the arguments and presentation. Of course, I am aware on page 316, I already explained mentioned in your clarification. Ambedkar is fond of quoting Ralph Emerson, consistency in the virtue of an ass. Of course, in this different context, but I find a lot of consistency in your paper and thesis. You have tried to show your natural position by not giving the titles Mahatma or Baba Sahib to both of them, though you insist to call him as Dr. Ambedkar, as we explained. Hope you will not insist us that we should call you Dr. Varan after this. Okay. The theoretical basis of both Gandhi and Ambedkar is given elaborately, which helps the reader to grasp the issue at hand very well. For instance, the thesis explains well how it was a blessing for Ambedkar to go overseas for his lectures, for his studies, where he was exposed to the prominent American and European thinkers, including Pope Leo XIII encyclical on labor. I like to mention Pope Leo XIII here because this papal Athenaeum was his brainchild, which he established in Candy way back in 1893. The chapter on Derrida is also quite comprehensive to discuss the notion of difference as differing and differing, how he was influenced by other philosophers like Leibniz, Freud, Nietzsche, Levinas, and so on, The nuances of Hegel and Heidegger are also brought to bear to make the best use of the notion to help your thesis, your project. The thesis explains very well how Derrida's deconstruction is not a restriction but actually anti-construction. Finally, the thesis points out the limitations of the present study and scope for the future research, like we want to study the nature and impact of Brahminism more and important issues other than Dalit emancipation. Maybe that can be the subject matter for your next doctorate, right? Okay. Now, sir, congratulations. With the permission of the chair, we can give a round of applause. Chair didn't want to waste time in between, that is what, correct? Okay. So now I give some suggestions. You can comment or you can take it up later for your reflection. And then I will make some specific questions and at the end some general questions, some clarifications. Okay? Suggestions first, the title itself, the title of this station. Since the issue of Dalit emancipation is the main focus and the idea of Derrida's difference is only a tool, though it's a very important and useful tool as you say, it can be given in the subtitle, not as a main title. We can think about it. In chapter 2, as various types of separatism are discussed, the item 2.5, prime importance of education, can be given after 2.7, after finishing the discussion on separatism, that would improve the flow and the coherence of the thesis. And the length of the chapters varies greatly, as you yourself have explained on page 379. For Derrida, about 40 pages, Ambedkar, 70 pages, for Gandhi, 100 pages, and of course, you explained the detail, but still one can see the presentation of historical events to be reduced a bit in order to maintain the philosophical vigor and the crispy grip of the thesis as we proceed. At some places, it is felt the ideas are repeated. It is bound to happen in such a large thesis. For instance, the note of the binary is presented on pages 360 and 362. In chapter 7, the first section 7.1, the recapitulation of the previous discussions. Here, the reader gets the impression that it is not exactly a recap of the ideas previously discussed because some new concepts are also discussed there. Also, as Professor Kuruvilla pointed out, glossary would be helpful for the reader at the end. And some of the minor corrections, I'll pass it on to you. You can have a look at it later. All right. So, some clarifications on some specific aspects. Ambedkar is generally accused of being a separatist, right? You also mentioned because of the electoral, separate electorate and so on. And how will you respond to this? Is he a separatist?
His methodology is separatism, of course, but I don't want to accuse him of separatism because given to his philosophization of the reality, that methodology is correct. So this work upholds his methodology to be correct, and that is how I value their differences because just the opposite stand that Gandhi would take. He would advocate more for integration, harmonization of the. He would his view of the reality is like that. So these two are like two different poles like. So coming to your question, Ambedkar's position is correct given to the Dalit oppression that is caused due to its religious sanction given inside the Hindu religion.
Good. So as we usually say, we got reservations. After some years, when all the communities are equal, we can remove the reservations. So shall we think of some in future, after some 100 years, when everybody is equal, we can remove this concept?
Surely, but...
okay, thank you. On page 20, after Swami Chaudhary, very she makes a distinction of the notion of equality, right? Predicative, axiomatic, generic, and dispositional equality. And she gives temple entry and taking water in the public pond, given as examples for the predicative and axiomatic equality. But when we look at these two examples, both temple entry and taking of water, one does not see much difference in these two events as both violate the natural rights as human beings, right? Why to make that distinction? Are you going along with that author?
That author, he is actually very good. I heard some talks in YouTube of his and read his book also. He philosophizes on Dr. Ambedkar's philosophy, and he comes out these 4 types of equalities. So in that process, he says this sort of complementary or getting equal rights in the water. For example, Mahat Satyagraha was claiming the rights for, because it is a natural right should be given to all human beings. But it is now denied to only to the Dalits, means it is actually a tyrannical thing that is done by the caste system.
Same thing, the entry to the temple is denied to the Dalits.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
So the point is both are at equal levels, and it's not.
Surely, yes.
Okay, all right. Good, thank you. Ambedkar fought for the Dalit emancipation from social, linguistic, territorial, economic, educational, academic, and political, religious angles. Which of these do you consider most important one? Which is most pressing?
According to his own words, he said political is a strong one. Politically, they need to be strong so that they can, it can have more impact on their life, because he would always advocate the use of constitutional measures.
Correct. Can we say there is a difference here with Gandhi and between Gandhi and Ambedkar in this context? Gandhi is upon social reform.
Yes.
Yeah. The question would be to Gandhi would be, without some political power, authority, power in your hands, how can you bring out the social?
Okay.
So you say that political reformation is more important. All right. Gandhi spoke about Sarvodaya and Antyodaya, right? Sarvodaya is welfare of all. And if the welfare of everybody is already included, why to speak about Antyodaya, welfare of the least and the lost?
Yeah, it is exactly the point I was referring to Dr. Kuruvilla's point also. Philosophy of the Bronx is like that, Derrida was like that. So I'm just going off the track, but what I want to say here is, though the least and the oppressed are within that all, yet Gandhi would say that will be simply blind notion only, to only talk about welfare of all, without giving importance, because always one of my professors used to give an example like this. In a family, if there is a disabled or differently abled person there, for example, in my family, my own brother is a mentally retarded one. So my mother and father, they cannot give importance equally to Sarvodaya, all the same pattern.
So it's the same logical justification for this
Society.
But just for the point of order, this was it mentally challenged. Maybe worse. All right. This one, Gandhi wanted to retain the Varna system, as we explained in many places, without any layer of superiority or inferiority among the people. Do you think is it possible? Or what are the consequences? Having Varna system but no inferiority superiority.
Actually, I would say that he has evolved out of this stance. Towards the end of his life, as he was evolving himself, he said, we'll go for, that was very, very startling for me as I was reading Gandhi, which I had never come across, though I come from a Gandhian family and a Gandhian background. Yet he was advocating the Harijan Varna, all the Hindus, let us call ourselves Harijan Varna, he says. Before that, he was telling, let us call ourselves Shudra Varna. Now, at that time, one of the correspondents write to him, why can't we make all of us like Brahmin Varna, so that everybody can be like Brahmins? Then he would be writing back to that correspondent. He would say, no, asking the very lowest of the society to climb up to the highest, but rather make the top, so-called top of the society, climb down to the lowest. So the final question for him was, let us call ourselves like Harijan Varna. It is his way of, again, we can judge him, whether this is correct or wrong, as we do for Dr. Ambedkar also, whether his separatism is correct or wrong. Now, this one also is challengeable, but yet his own philosophy and his own way of looking at the reality is like that. His own way of integrating the Hindu society. He said, let us all feel united, and united not claiming the lowest of our society to climb up, but we all climb down to them, and then we shall be united. The same fraternity aspect he was.
Yeah, maybe that was the moment they would have decided to finish him off.
Yes.
To make them also.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons.
All right. Truth is God and God is truth, right? Which is true for Gandhi.
Truth is God.
In the beginning, he had the other way around.
He had a goddess truth. Then later on he changes his position because he wanted to include the atheists also,
Okay.
one who may not believe God, but the
That's
God,
an easy
truth is acceptable by everybody. So he said God is truth, that would be the best reason.
Good. Can you mention some different types of truth? Scientific truth, example.
Ontological truth is there, moral truth is there,
Logical
cosmic
truth.
truth is there, logical truth is there, rational truth.
You know, it's something called imaginary truth. If
Imaginary.
we both of us think that the audience is listening to both of us, it's an imaginary truth. Okay. Now, when you speak about God, this truth, he means God is the existence, Sadan, right?
Sir.
All right. In this knowledge, I always ask students, does God tell lies? Does God tell lies?
What's the necessity
He
for?
has not told you it.
What's the necessity for?
He's a good person, does not tell. Can God tell lies?
Not necessary.
Not necessarily, I cannot.
Cannot really.
Why?
Because God Himself, God
That is clarity, okay? Because God is truth, existence, that means He cannot tell lies because of self-knowledge. All right. Yeah. This Ambedkar and Gandhi, do you find any similarity between perhaps Jeyard and Martin Luther vis-a-vis Christianity? Are you able to strike some any resemblance? Gandhiji and Ambedkar vis-a-vis Hinduism, Jeyard and Martin Luther in the context of Christianity.
in the context of Christianity. Okay. I am not following
Okay.
exactly.
Martin Luther reacted Christianity and came out of it. Whereas Jeyard, though he had some problem.
Okay, good.
Right, so that should be the point for the next topic. Alright, Ambedkar was very strong in his criticism against Gandhi. I won't call him Mahatma, right? Now, do you agree with this, or are you ready to call him Mahatma?
Me?
Gandhi. By the way, the father is listening to you. Okay?
Yes. Even Gandhi would not allow people to call him
That is
Mahatma.
out of humility. Okay.
Yes, of course. So Mahatma is a title which he did not claim for himself. He did not earn for. Of course, he earned by his life, but others called him, no, which is actually the title given by
So
the
it is not
Ambedkar.
correct. And
Yes.
in this context, perhaps one can appreciate Gandhi more than Ambedkar because of his background, right? Coming from such a different society. Whereas Ambedkar from the low class community, so-called low class community, suffered. So it's easy for him to revolt or protest against, etc. Whereas Gandhi, a different, totally different situation, but still he took up the cause. So don't you think that Gandhi is more appreciable in a way than Ambedkar?
I don't think so, because the same problem will come if I am going to appreciate one person because of this aspect. Okay, because of that aspect, we'll appreciate that person, but that need not demean the other person, delimit the other person. Other person, of course, the contrary view is also possible. Now, Gandhi can be equally
All right, okay.
called as-
Appreciating Gandhi doesn't mean that we put
Yes, of course. We appreciate each one according to their own perspectives and philosophies.
And those Kuruvilla was mentioned about Brahminism as a true enemy. In the whole project, you discovered that. Do you have any good Brahmin friends?
Of course,
Okay. Did you tell them this one?
it is a problematic thing actually.
So the point is, when we say that, is it not that ostracizing one particular community instead of, as he suggested, finding a way of including them also towards a holistic community society rather than putting them and projecting as the core inimical party? What do you say?
Yes. So when we use the word Brahminism, we don't mean exactly that the Brahmin. It always is a problem for me when I am teaching philosophy in my seminary.
The ideology.
Ideology, yeah. The ideology that which is totalizing, which is authoritarian,
Good.
which is upholding the caste system.
Yeah, the point is clear. In general parlance, we usually identify, so we should make a nuance or the explanation of the
But
point.
as persons, we love the Brahmins. Of course, we have good friends also.
Okay, good. Derrida rightly challenges the metaphysics of presence in the ideas of logocentrism or phonocentrism and all, which can be said to be the derivative of the former. Derrida challenges the importance given to speech rather than writing in the binary versus writing, speech versus writing. In your opinion, which is more important and advantageous, speech or writing? Your own reflection?
I would say writing is more advantageous. Because it gives the opening for example, if I am holding on to only Jesus' words, as I would hear him, like I would not have the whole
Exactly.
context.
If there is no writing, you will not
Exactly.
transmit the
Yes.
knowledge. Correct.
It is because of the written Bible that those who had been with him and then their experiences with their and all these things they have written down that we are able to have access to Jesus. So writing is more important, I would say. But unfortunately, philosophy started to give importance more to speak than to study. Yes.
Probably that time they did not have much writing, this printing and so on.
But Derrida would be complaining, means will be arguing that even Socrates' arguments were transmitted to the generations by philosophy due to Plato. It's not because of writing.
Okay. Deconstruction is the tension between memory, fidelity, and heterogeneity and new states, right? This is true not only in the linguistic or metaphysical considerations, even in the world of science also. You may remember Thomas Kuhn speaks about essential tension for the scientists to be rooted in the traditions on the one hand, at the same time to be open to the new challenges, right? It's the same thing with culture, religion, etc. How do you look at the tension between the roots and the branches, so to say?
Okay. To rephrase your comment, I could say that the tension between the tradition and the continuity. So tradition, of course, it is needed because it is rooted. We are rooted in history. So historical aspect, my own past, our own past, humanity's past is of course needed. But we cannot be always be contained in the past. We always need to go forward. So as you said, root is needed. At the same time, the branches with its fruits.
So will give equal importance to both.
Equality in what sense? Because, for example, complementary, we don't treat them like equality.
Maybe not as a binary.
Yes.
Good. So just last question before we go to the general question. You quote Derrida saying the center is not the center. So the center is not the center, but the center is somewhere, and not at the center, it's somewhere else.
That is exactly the question.
In other words, can we remove the center at all? Will it not lead to relativism, the usual complaint against?
Yes, of course. Yes. There is a problem always, relativism. When we attack absolutism, naturally, it leads to relativism. Right? When you too much talk about relativism, then absolute becomes very problematic. Of course, it is there.
Comparing this Ambedkar and Gandhi, can we say the weakness of the one is the strength of the other? Will it be okay with you?
Okay, if that be the case, then that I would take that as a complementary thing, which one lacks, the other one has, which the other one lacks, the other one, this one has.
So that's what the complementary.
That's why the yin-yang coordination.
Okay, good. Some general questions just to finish our discussion. Do you think that India would have been better if Gandhi would have been alive for some more years and not like that?
I am happy that he was killed.
Oh my God.
Because, yes, because if at all he had not been assassinated by Brahmin, so-called Brahmin, those Brahmins, of course with their affiliations with that organization, if at all it had not been done, he would remain always the villain, for.
So then you seem to be favoring one of the binaries. All right, okay.
It is only because of that assassination we are sure that he was really anti-authoritarian ideology.
To situate contextualize our discussion, the recent burning issue of awarding 2 years of imprisonment to Rahul Gandhi, right? And already he was the Wayanad constituency is announced to him. Do you think that Derrida can come to his rescue?
Surely, because he is in a different position because the authoritarian stance that the government or the ideology is taking, it is attacking on it. We know, all of us know that it is not actually good that he was, it is not justice at all. But yet, even the judiciary has taken sides, the judiciary, the top function.
Just the previous line, the judge was changed, right? Okay, good. All right, the last question. The relevance of this whole study. First, as a citizen of India. Second, as a teacher of philosophy. Third, as a priest. How will you put it? Just 2 sentences for each category.
As a citizen of India, I am obliged towards the deprived of my society, of the Dalits. As a second, what you said, priest or
As a teacher of philosophy.
teacher of philosophy, of course, this one has a lot of philosophical input. So it gives me clarity for me when I teach philosophy to my students. I have more hold that this Derridian differential approach, I convey to them. And as a priest, is that?
As a priest.
As a priest, of course, it is very, very meaningful because I see Jesus himself, he was a person who had these characteristics.
Do you think that the church has done enough for Dalit emancipation in general?
It is trying to do, but yet a lot need to be done. A lot of structural changes could be done.
Maybe that's the people like you are there emerging now. Okay, good. So thank you, Varan. Before I hand over the mic, the personal reason I told you, I'll tell you later. You thought I would forget, then or you I'm happy that my student's father is the student of my father. That's the first thing.
So thank you, Stephen Jeyard. Now over to the guide.
You can hear me, Varan?
Yes.
All right. I agree with all that the leaders have said. And I'm also very happy today that along. Okay, some problems with it. All right. The long-awaited day has come finally. Let me come close. Okay, the guide doesn't have the luxury of time, so I should be very brief, but as Shakespeare says, time is out of joint. So I should place myself in this out of joint, in the non-choratic space, and try to give some feedback. Your study is very contextual, very historical, informative, and also innovative. It's very personal to you, and therefore I could see the passion with which you involved. It is personal because your dad is a Gandhian and Gandhi is here with your mom and brother. Also, you are someone who has this strong commitment to social justice. So in that sense, this whole study of Ambedkar and dialoguing, making Ambedkar converse with Gandhi through the optic of Derrida in your research is something very, very personal, and therefore I could see the passion in you. It's great that you have your colleagues from St. Paul's and your professors like Professor Rudhanathan is here, Dr. John Kulanda is here, Dr. Terence and others, Valentin is here, I think. Yes. Yes. I'm happy that they're all there to support you in this journey of yours. The greatest point of your thesis is this play of difference. Now you see the play of difference is not against center. Okay, the play of difference is not against center but doesn't have a fixed center. So that is why it makes it a play. So that is what you are trying to bring it in your thesis. So it is not that you center everything around Gandhi or center everything around Ambedkar and therefore make them as opposites, but then you try to see how this center can keep shifting. And that is the greatness of the thesis in terms of the context in which how this center can keep shifting. Now, also you chose this difference as a theoretical framework not for a reason. You could have chosen something from the Indian point of view, like you have the Advaitic tradition speaking about Neti, Vedanta tradition. You have got the Jaina tradition speaking about Anekantavada, which you mentioned definitely. You also have the idea of Lila, the play, Lila. Even in the Tamil tradition, you have got the immanence transcendence being complemented in the person of God. You see, the very word Kadavul, he who transcends and he who is immanent. Again, please pick up the phone, okay, somebody's phone seems to be working. Make sure that is off. Now it is okay. It's not your phone, no? Thanks. All right. But the reason why you chose difference is all these things are placed within religious metaphysics. And therefore, difference has a strong political significance. Though, of course, it goes back to the Platonic Cora in some way, but then again, Cora is not to be seen typically within the metaphysical scheme of things. And therefore, the political importance of difference, which probably may not get into this theoretical framework within Indian tradition, and therefore your choice of difference is obviously right. And in that sense, difference is not a failure against totalitarianism. Difference is precisely a response to totalitarianism. I'll tell you why. Derrida takes this idea of trace associated with difference from Levinas. And Levinas is someone who is challenging the totalitarian regime, the fascism, or the Nazism to be more precise. And it is there Derrida is developing that. Only thing is Derrida is lamenting Levinas is lacking that political import which he is developing in his politics of friendship, in his spectra of Marx and so on. So therefore you see difference becomes very essential, right? And it is not definitely a failure against totalitarianism, it is precisely a challenge. Also, it is important the way there are some things you related to Gandhi in terms of Satyagraha and the poetics that Gandhi speaks about in Bhagavad Gita. Partly that falls within this play. Again, the reason is very simple. For Gandhi, truth is not epistemological. It is ontological. In that sense, Subhash Anand is somewhat correct. We may not use the word postmodern, I myself don't like that word, that's a different story. But that there is something of Gandhi which one can see in Nietzsche in terms of the eternal recurrence, because it's ontological, or in terms of Aletheia of Heidegger, because the liking to be, or in terms of the not-it of Derrida. So all these things one can see a certain ontological dimension there. So that is why, in some way, I think Subhash is right. Also, of course, when Professor Stephen mentioned, it is important that we use politically correct word. The correct word is not even mentally challenged. It is people with special needs. So it's very important that we are politically correct. All right. Now, of course, there was discussion about writing, architecture, and then I will not go into the detail. Having said these positive remarks about the strengths of your thesis, I got one question with two parts. So if you can just take it down and then you can respond back. Your title says it is for the emancipation of Dalits, and that seems to be the purpose of the research, obviously. Are you making this emancipation of Dalits a logocentrism? In some way, are you not making that absolute? In some way, are you not constructing a grand narrative? Why not somebody ask this question, why can't this be deconstructed? And if you say it cannot be deconstructed, explain why, from the Derridian point of view, of course. And if that is the case, then you need to tell me, how does Derridian play of difference help you to overcome the binaries that are, well, within each other? Not just Gandhi and Ambedkar as in two poles, but the binaries within which you may work. For example, I will give you a simple example. In Gandhi, the binary that he constructs is children of Brahma versus children of Hari. The binary that Ambedkar would construct is Dalit versus caste Hindus. Right? How does this play out? Or another thing, within Gandhi's thing and Ambedkar's thing, also you have a binary. One, non-violence, another social justice. Obviously, there is an amount of violence could be anticipated within the social justice of Ambedkar, though he doesn't advocate, I'm not saying. But one could foresee, just like in the debate between Gandhi and Martin Buber. Remember, Ambedkar comes from a strong Lockean tradition of revolution. Therefore, the revolution is something that is necessarily synchronized with ahimsa in some way. So, how do you figure this hostility and hospitality, the play of difference here? Could you like to respond to this?
First, I would take up the first question of whether this thesis makes Dalit emancipation itself as logocentric. making it to be the absolute thing we reached. As already during Professor Dr. Kuruvilla's intervention, I was telling that this was already given as a question to Derrida. He would be saying that always, whenever this authoritarianism is under play, the marginalized, the periphery, need to be upheld with extra care. It is with that extra care this theme of Dalit emancipation gets importance. Of course, it need not be made as the center, right? Because as we were also talking, you said that the changing of centers is actually the play of difference. So in that way, it need not be made as logocentric, the thing to be achieved, right? But it is one of the necessary things need to be done, because even after so much of interventions history has made in India, right from Buddhism times up to the later times, right? Yet the caste system, the untouchability is resilient in various forms. Again, I would quote the recent incident, Inigo incident. It really is a shocking incident for all of us, that how still untouchability is in practice, in various forms, in modern ways. So, if that be the case, actually, the emancipation is being reached. So, it is not actually making it as the center of discussion, but it is one of the necessary things that need to be done. So in that way only this project attempts to do that. It does not, in no way it makes the Dalit emancipation as the absolute thing to be reached. So authoritarian, it is against any authoritarian discourse. So Dalit emancipation made as authoritarian discourse, it is not in favor of it.
Absolutely, the Derrida would say everything else is deconstructible and to be deconstructed, but one thing cannot be. What is it?
Justice.
Justice. It is in the name of justice. So this whole business of emancipation of Dalits is done in the name of justice. Justice is deconstruction. So we should never lose focus and sight of that. Now come to the binary overcoming.
Yeah, I lost the sense of that question. Please can you repeat that?
In some way, within each of them also there is a binary, isn't it?
Yes.
Not only cross also is there, within them also there is binary. How does this play out difference? There is hostility and hospitality. How does it come into play here?
One thing acknowledged that when this work tries to call out their anti-authoritarian stances, in their philosophy, the philosopher of France also, but does not want to epitomize their theories or their philosophies as the best. There are also loopholes in them. There are also problems in them. There are also binary oppositions in each of them. It is because of that stance only they were constructed as opposites. Otherwise, there is no need that they need to be opposites. So it is there. Binary oppositions are at play in each of their individual philosophies, of course. So that may be added as one of the scope, the limitation, of course, of this project, and also it adds to the scope of this project that further study need to be done in using the tool of difference in each one's individual philosophies. How binarization already is at work in them, so all these things can be done also.
Thank you, we did that.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Nishant, for engaging Varan. Now, time is available for the audience to ask their questions and also some observations. So, let me. The panel will be going to discuss the result. Then, after that, I request the dean to declare the result and indicate the further requirement for the doctoral candidate. So till then, please don't go away. Please wait till the result is declared. Now over to the audience. Kindly pass the mics when somebody asks the question. So you have around 15 minutes.
Thank you, Father Varan, for a wonderful presentation, and I thank the members, exam facilitators, and Professor Nathan. Well, I have a few comments over your, not exactly presentation, the conceptual value that you have. Number one, can you call difference as a philosophy if Derrida may not be in favor of Inigo? Number one. When Derrida critiques logocentrism, phonocentrism, phalocentrism in the context of moral, ethic, or justice, which Nishant was pointing out, and he never criticized Dharmas. Is it right? So, what is that totality that Ambedkar, Derrida criticizes by use of the concept a totality, a sense of being, even the sense of God, right? Which is presence. Now, my question to you, Father Varan, what is that totality which you are exploring so well? And the entire thesis, the amount of energy that you have spent, and with all the passion. My question is, what is that totality? Is both Ambedkar as well as Gandhi together in agreement? Antithetic towards. Is it Brahminism or casteism as a whole? What is that sense of privileged being that both of them were discontent with? Rather than picking out, opposites, they complement. In fact, for Derrida, they contaminate. Opposites, binaries contaminate, consume each other. For in the context of signification, right? So, I think my comment is, even thesis opens up very strong further exploration in terms of this kind of consonance, if not the dissonance, the totality within Indian cultural tradition, the totality within Indian philosophical tradition, against which you are now taking a step. What is that totality that they were not in favor?
Yeah. Taking Dr. Ambedkar's perspective, the totality is the Hinduism itself is that totality against which he wanted to work. So, along with the Hinduism, its tentacles of casteism, along with the religious sanction of varna. So, that whole system of Hinduism itself, he says that is the thing that need to be done away with, because everything is rooted on this totality. That's what his analysis is. But Gandhi disagrees, intellectually and philosophically with this standpoint, I suppose. He takes Hinduism as a religion, as any religion is needed for any believer. Hinduism is itself a religion which contributes to the morality and to the good life, well-being of the believers. Of course, it has its own discrepancies, of course. He criticizes it also. He wants to reform it. So, in that way, we would say that his being inside Hinduism, at the same time criticizing the totalitarian aspect, within it practiced by the Brahmindom, you would say, kingdom like Brahmindom. So the Brahmindom, how it totalizes within Hinduism, he is against that. So I would say Gandhi's perspective is different. Within Hinduism, what is totalizing? So that is the point of attack for Gandhi. Whereas for Ambedkar, the whole of the Hindu religion itself, itself is a totalizing thing against which he wanted to walk away. He wanted to annihilate. He wanted to annihilate the caste and annihilation of caste and all these things, I suppose.
Well, for Ambedkar is annihilation of caste. It means separatism is not a centrality for Ambedkar. It's an annihilation of caste in totality.
Yes.
And separatism can be a part and parcel.
Exactly.
And that doesn't take the centrality of an argument to put Ambedkar and Gandhiji. That becomes again more problem.
Yeah, so that's why this work I have used is a methodology. Sorry, it's a methodology. It's not the totality. It's not the fullness that he wants. Actually, his ideal is a fraternal living, end osmosis, communitarian living. Actually, he is for that. He wants to have a nation which is fraternal. Fraternity is one of the basic things, liberty, equality, fraternity.
In that case, probably Ambedkar may not like to call him postmodernist.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Right. Also, Deepa would not like to call him post-structuralist. Thank you. One.
Yeah, thank you. So, next question. Yeah, there, Sandeep. All right, later.
Okay.
Myself, Father Varan, I'm really very much impressed with your thesis, which I had privilege of perusing through sometime. It feels to me a part of your own personality as I see you in our community, how you are able to accept everybody together with their differences, not everybody without their differences, but with the differences you are able to accept. So I see this very, very relevant to your own way of approach you take. Therefore, I really thank you for this offering this tool of temperance, philosophy temperance, for us to understand both Gandhi and Dr. Then to Dr. Nishant also I have something I did appreciative day. I would like to thank him for enlightening you in this, because you have mentioned that he has been an inspiration to you. But my question is related to this egocentrism, the logocentrism. You see, you said Dalit emancipation is not logocentric, maybe one of the important things that we have to do. Is there anything at all that is logocentric for us? As Christians, as human beings? So,
Okay, yeah. Actually, a lot of logocentric things that is going on within us. As Christians, I would say, as Indian Christians, casteism is itself logocentrism. The practice of casteism within ourselves is itself logocentrism. Because it alienates somebody else. It does not see the greatness of the plurality of the community. It possesses presence and meaning only to one privileged group, which leads to the alienation of the other group, non-presence, meaning is not present in that other group, So that is one explanation that we can give, that logocentrism is a practice, and that's why Derrida is alarmed. He accuses the whole of the metaphysical tradition, the Western metaphysical tradition, that it is logocentric. The metaphysics of presence is at work, he says. And as somebody comments on the philosophical tradition itself, philosophy actually emanates out of our everyday life activities. So it is actually a comment, the metaphysics of presence or the logocentrism itself is a comment on our own mode of thinking, our own way of life. It is basically against this, the philosophy of difference, it tries to work. It is actually attack on each individual person's logocentric thinking. The craving for having truth with myself. The ego, as you beautifully mispronounced that word, because it is egocentric. Logocentric is actually egocentric. So it is against all these tendencies philosophy of difference contributes different approach. Thank you.
Okay, Sandeep.
Yeah, I will not waste much of your time, but directly pose the question. Now you see, when Ambedkar embraced Buddhism, before to that there was a Christian presence also. And there were a lot of conversion to other religions also, be it Islam, then Sikhism, and Buddhism as well. It was earlier also. So now my question is this, that while answering the Pune Pact, when Father Guru made an intervention with you, you mentioned that perhaps this could be one of the reasons when Gandhi said no to the separate electorate that Britishers had already granted to the other community, but not for the Dalit, because it didn't want this community to go away from the main fold of Hinduism. But prior to that, there were already conversions. So was that not into the mind of Gandhi that what was happening? That is my first question. Then my second question is, like, what was Gandhi's view on conversion of Hindus to the other religions, and what is your response as a Catholic priest to it?
Okay. First of all, the conversions were going on even at the time of Gandhi and all these things. You know, Gandhi, many a time we misunderstand Gandhi that he was against conversions. He once said, Dalits, if you think that it is going to liberate you, you can go for it. Like he has written also. So he was not dreadfully against conversion, but he was of the point that this is not going to be the only solution. Solution is far ahead, because the fact is that even they have converted themselves to Buddhism, we already know. Even they have converted themselves to some foreign. Then we need to start respecting the next. If we have some caste situation of the society, come to understand that yes, that tendency is already within me. Then this theoretical framework will give us that we need not be like that. We can be plurally accepting the others also. Like this, the implications of it, the practical dimensions of it are varied. It is according to each one's existential situation, the experience. This theoretical framework will give a lot of answers.
Thank you. So here Dr. Difference comes to an end. So I congratulate Father Varan for being here for the defense. And now the panel will go for discussing the process. Final thing is going to come. So the dean will come and announce the result and also indicate the further steps. So I also appreciate the efforts of the panel for enabling this process. And I request the audience here, please be here. Within 10 minutes, we'll see that the process is completed. Thank you. Yes.
May I invite all of you to rise. Also, varan. So, I stand before you now not as a guide of the thesis of Varan, but as the Dean of the Faculty of Philosophy. And I am happy by the authority vested in us by the Holy See. Varan has completed an important step in his obtaining doctoral degree. This is the most important step. He has completed and he has received a very good grade. The grade will be communicated to you by the office Monday. So let us all give him a good round of applause. However, Varan, we don't award you the degree yet. You still have one important step to complete. You need to publish your thesis after incorporating all the suggestions that are made by the readers, which I will collate and pass it to you shortly, within a few days. Within 3 months, I request you to publish your thesis either entirely or in part and submit 5 copies to the office of the registrar. After which, we will take it in our Senate, discuss it, and award you the degree. And therefore, I congratulate you for the successful completion of this particular defense, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Dear friends, I take this opportunity. It's a really important event of acknowledging my indebtedness. As your handouts, the last page will have, that is my actually the whole being. When I consider this research journey that I had gone through. First, I start with the last that is given there. The unknown and the Dalits. It is because of them I am standing here. It is because of them that I am impelled, to do this research work. It is because of their situation, the oppressed situation, that I had encountered, being with them. I had lived with them, and I had encountered, all these things, in a personal way. So it is that mass of population I want to thank first. Secondly, that mass of population, the love for them is impelled by none other than Jesus, my master, our Lord. So I place before this group my indebtedness to the divine also. Thirdly, the examiner panel. It's really all known faces, but in different capacities. First, to start with the external examiner, Professor Dr. Kuruvilla. I started all my journey with this face only. My journey study at Leuven was now cancelled because of some visa issue. Then I immediately contacted him, through my daddy's friendship. Then what he said immediately, you come and see me, we will talk it out. I came. He gave first a positive note welcoming me into this institute. I started with this space and I end this with this space also, because it's really a great thing that he is the external examiner. I thank you, dear Father. And all the other faces also. Yes, of course. Thank you. The internal examiner is another phase I started with, because the preliminary papers, 5 preliminary papers were wanted of me. He was one of the preliminary paper guides, and of course my guide, Professor Dr. Nishant was also one of the preliminary paper guide. It's because of that only I started with him. So Dr. Stephen Jeyard, I owe a lot to you. Your comments were very good. It was of course enlightening, at the same time appreciating also. So thank you a lot for being my internal examiner. Thirdly, the moderator of the session, he is another known face for me, because he was the only teacher in this institute for me, because I never sat in classes to any of the faculties here, but he was the only one who taught me Pali. I entered into his class and then discontinued also abruptly. As soon as the grammar part came, I said, I will take leave of you. I said, he was insisting, please sit, at least we will finish the exam and go. I said, we will consider later. But now he is the ending phase for me, being the moderator of the session. Thank you so much, Father, for being to me. Now, last but not the least, but the greatest, my guide, But for him, I would not have entered into this theme at all, because one of the themes that was given for preliminary papers was political philosophy. And Dr. Kuruvilla said, Nishant, Dr. Nishant is going to be a guide for that. So I asked him, he gave a page-long email, how I should proceed in that paper. And there were a lot of indications in that. One author caught me. That was Derrida. I wanted to just venture into him because I have never studied about him. Never studied. In my philosophy, that paper means somehow it was not there. I was studying about awareness, not about him. And I started with the simple cartoon work of, in our library there is a book. With that thing I started, I fell in love with Derrida. With that only I proceeded, and now it is really a beautiful thing, that all because of this Derridian scholar. So thank you, my dear guide, for having guided me. He gave me a lot of freedom, I would say. He gave me a lot of freedom to do this work all by myself. As I already said, he said, doctor, don't worry, why are you using that word doctor only for Ambedkar? Because normally in intellectual peace we don't do that. Yet I said, I will keep on doing that. And I gave an explanation towards the end also in my thesis. He said, okay, this is only small instance that a lot of freedom he gave, a lot of guidance he gave. But for him, I would not have very easy. Even now, I was jotting down a lot of points from his interventions, because he is really a scholar. So thank you, dear Father, Dr. Nishant. Then coming to this JDB campus, the president is here. Thank you, dear president, the earlier president, Dr. Selvar, also all the staff of this campus. Many staff members are present here, and the library staff, the librarians, and also non-teaching staff. For all of them, I owe. Then coming to my family. though it is not the third order that I should address, but yet in the sequence of orders I am coming. It is but for them, what I am is what my family is. It is because of them that I am getting emotional because of the thing. Good, thank you. It speaks a lot, I suppose. Then comes the St. Paul's community where I belong, and a good number of fathers have come here. For parents, the director of our institute, the Valentine, John Conley, these are all very important persons for me. They support me a lot. Thank you, Honorable. At this point, I take this opportunity to thank the board of bishops of my seminary, especially my Archbishop, Most Reverend Dr. Anthony Bakusamy is the chairman of the board also. The rector, he wanted to be present here, I suppose. He is with me in his whole spirit. And also all the staff members of my community and all the students also. Because teaching my students, I grew a lot in my understanding of my thesis and understanding of Jeyard also. Then coming to my diocese, there is a representative from my diocese, Father Cruz. He's a very close friend, very good friend. He represents my whole diocese. He made it a point to come over here because I know it is quite a long distance. For people to come all the way from Madurai just for attending this difference. Morning they came, and many of them are leaving tonight. Some of them are leaving tomorrow night. It's just for them they have come. It means a lot. Thank you. And also all the co-priests, particularly want to make a mention of the anti-caste priests. Jati Odipu Iyakkam, that was one of the Iyakkam we had in our diocese and also in Tamil Nadu. That had given me a lot of input for this consciousness, Dalit consciousness, pro-Dalit consciousness. And in this aspect, I especially thank my former colleges wherever I studied, especially for all those things that's represented here, Dr. Lulunathan. His presence also is very, very meaningful to me, because my philosophy studies, one of the very important persons, is Dr. Lulunathan, and he is a very close friend of our family also. He did his doctorate under my daddy, and in that way, we have a lot of connections, and intellectually also, he is a very important, feed, during my, and afterwards also, he used to give me a lot of chances, intellectual chances in the seminars and all. So thank you, Uncle. I call him Uncle only. So thank you, Uncle, and for all the things that you all to us. I take this opportunity to thank my sponsors, the ACN, Germany. It is they support me financially. With this exercise, all my things are getting over with this. Of course, with the publication of the thesis, I make this opportunity to thank them also. Then, my friends. Many of my friends are here. Many of my friends are with me in spirit. Especially for Arul, Brother Cruz, they are the ones who supported me because these 2 years I was not residing here. I was doing my work from my seminary. So even up to submission, even up to standing with me at the last minute, making arrangements, all these things, these two friends have done, and many are also there. Many of my friends, I could see many faces, not to mention each and every one. I thank each one of my friends, not only present here, also present with me in spirit. And with all these things, all the good-minded well-wishers who are present here to come over here, participate in this thing, the NBSC community, the Ishwani community, the Jesuits community, many communities, the Norbertines community, so many are here. I am very thankful to each one of you, those who are present here, so thank you. and I invite each one of you to join with me with us in the fellowship meal that we have soon after, and we'll have a good celebration of enjoyment. Last but not the least, this Blessed Sacrament community, those who supported me a lot and now also is supporting me a lot. And Brother Westling is here, always a very good support. He is my spiritual son also, I am proud to tell, and he is here helping me. So thank you. No wonder. If at all I have forgotten anybody, please forgive me, accept all these things. Thank you, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, Varan. Thank you for bringing your family, especially their colleagues as well. For those of you who don't know, we have a new bishop of Pune, Bishop John Rodriguez. Thank you. News 4:30. We are waiting for your doctor.
Yeah, just that's enough. Only that. Nice, brother. Thank you.
Only for certain people. Okay. Only with the link you can join. Yeah, you okay. நாளைக்கு கோபுரம் ஓவா ஃபோன் பண்ணேன் நான் எங்கே இருக்கேன்னு கேட்கலாம் பேசிட்டு இருக்கேன்